We are live. So live. Let's see what we got. Who we got? Dude, it's I gotta be honest, like this shit's starting to get to me, man.
What, the COVID?
Yeah.
Dude, you saw my meltdown post from 2 nights ago. I got a whole bunch of texts from people like that. Like, are you okay? Do you have corona? What's going on? I'm like, no, man. I'm just saying, like, I'm depressed.
I seen that, dude. Everybody, what the hell?
I held up for like 3 weeks. And then, like, last Friday night, I'm like, oh, man. And part of it, you know what I think it was? In retrospect, I normally would have my son. So my whole routine was just off. Like, I hadn't worked in a few days. I didn't have my kid. And just all of a sudden, I was like, man.
Yeah, it's rough, man. It's like, and I'm one of them people who, like I said, I'm always on the go, and yeah, it gets crazy.
That's what I want my Trump check for.
What's
The
that?
car.
Yeah.
I'm ready to be on the go myself.
Well, I'm actually ordering my clutch, so that'll make that other one available. Yeah. But no, this stuff's like killing me. It's a huge adjustment.
I know. Yeah, at first, like, I'm one of those back against the wall, study the night before a test kind of people, right?
Yeah.
It's just the way I've become because of my lifestyle. So I normally like respond to a crisis pretty level-headedly at first, pretty good.
Right.
Yeah, I already live like kind of a life of isolation in that, like I don't have family up here or anything, just me. So
yeah, it's really when you're used to just doing spontaneous things and
been taking a lot of walks. Walmart and Meijer. Pretty much buy some kind of produce every day.
Yeah. So we got Natalie.
Hi, Natalie.
Natalie's awake. We got Chuck and Doreen, that mom and dad from Arizona. Megan, how's it going, Megan?
Just for now. Hi, Megan.
Yeah, for now. Funny.
Hey, Luke. You're still there?
Let's hit those share buttons. Tag some people.
You had 45
Huh?
up here as of yesterday? 45
As of
days.
yesterday, yeah. It was like,
I almost hit a like on that. Then I was like, I probably shouldn't like that. Although 45 is less than.
hey, Meg. Robin.
How's Robin?
Oh, we got to do a real good show today because Robin's here.
Yeah, we got to bring our best if Robin's watching.
Right. Lynn. Hey, Lynn. How's it going?
I shouldn't have a grudge against Robin just because she called in like 6 weeks in a row on me, should I? Probably not.
Yeah, since you're closed, probably. Yeah.
This was before we were closed.
Uh-huh.
This was before COVID. She didn't have COVID. She just
Before.
had a poor work ethic.
Oh,
Talking to you, Robin.
Called in. Hit those share buttons. Let's get people in here.
Hey, Bree.
Sure. Tag. You're it.
Hi, Katrina.
All right, we're going to play a little game. Everybody has to tag one person.
That's a great idea. If everybody can tag just one person,
boom,
1 million people will be watching.
I got mine. Who you got?
Hi, Allison.
Hey, Katrina.
All right, I'm going to tag my person, right?
Start tagging one person at least. I don't see him. Do you see him?
Tagged.
Right. Tagged. Let me put on the comments here. Boom. Y'all on the big screen. Oh, thanks, Tim. Tim tagged me.
That's right.
What a cheese. What? There. Oh, Lynn just tagged a bunch of people.
3 weeks. You rounded down.
Kayla's here. Jerry better show up.
Good work, Lynn.
Lynn just tagged. She tagged. tag team. There it is.
Back again.
Back again. Megan got one.
Good work, Megan.
All right, we're getting there. Today's going to be a great topic because it's one of them controversial.
It is kind of controversial, yeah.
Like, especially with the two of us sitting here, right? Because
it's already controversial.
Yeah. But we're going to light it up today. Hey, Georgia, we're playing the game Tag Somebody.
Yeah. This is like probably since COVID, the longest we went without doing a show, right? Because Friday morning, it's been over 72 hours. It was a break.
Yeah,
it was a break for us.
We took a break.
It was a long break.
Yep.
Vacation's over.
All right, Georgia got her tag in. Tag.
Tag.
Oh, Lynn's just going to town.
All right, Lynn. MVP. Top fan. Top
MVP.
fan.
Georgia got another. Jerry's here. Jerry, we're playing the game. Tag someone. Everybody got to tag someone.
Tag.
Boom. I tagged another one. I'm tagging. Hey, we want you guys to pipe in on this one. This one needs some opinions because it's really, really, really up in the air.
It really is. There's a lot of states right now that are making decisions in cities, I should say.
Yeah.
A lot of cities that are debating this very issue right now.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna get started here in about 2 minutes. So tag. Georgia, I already tagged Scott. I think he's got some Wi-Fi issues down in Florida. I talked to him earlier today. Get those tags in there.
That's right, Robin. Tag your sister and then call her and make sure she gets on.
Boom. I got another one. Boom.
Is that all you got, Robin?
That's it, Robin.
You have like 9 kids.
Yeah,
tag them all.
Tag them.
At least tag the ones you know about.
Right. Man, we got about a minute.
I'm gonna tag Katie.
This is gonna be interesting because I'm gonna give it to you from the law enforcement perspective because we're caught in the middle of this, right?
Yeah. This is really more up your alley, actually, in a way.
Well, and I think too that the way the stigma's changed, and that's gonna lay heavy on some people on the decisions they make when dealing with these facilities.
I think I'm gonna try something different. And I'm also going to give the law enforcement perspective this time.
Oh!
Yeah. Normally I give my own.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go ahead and...
Well, I got to hear that.
I will speak for Michigan State Police this time.
Yeah.
I'm representing
I'm
Michigan State
sure
Police.
they'll appreciate that.
I'm sure they will.
All right. And we're going to get started.
Let's get started, Joe.
Let's get started.
You want to get started?
All right, we're going to get started. So what we have today is we're going to discuss safe injection sites, which are not common in the United States, but they are worldwide. I mean, there's a lot of countries really using them. I know Australia, the Netherlands, Canada, just to name a few. They're really big over there. And a safe injection site is, for those of you that don't know, is just somewhere where someone who uses any substance illegally by injection can go to, and they will provide a clean needle. They have medical personnel on board. So when you walk in, you sign in. There's counselors where they talk to you about going to rehab, getting help. Some of them are actually signing you up for health insurance, doing the things that you really need to get started. They get you in the rehab, and statistics have proven that has worked. But they also are testing the heroin for fentanyl and other substances. So there are a lot of pros to these facilities. We're not quite that far yet, but what we do have is another, I guess, version of it. And Tim, go ahead and why don't you fill us in on that one?
Well, that would be needle exchanges, right? That's kind of like the
simplified version.
Simplified version. There's a different word but that'll work. Yeah. So like needle exchanges are where people can go and do just that, exchange needles. And the whole idea with those is not treatment, but harm reduction. And
Yes.
we've talked about harm reduction in the past. And when we've done that, usually we focused on like Suboxone and Vivitrol, those things. But this is another version of harm reduction. I think you were saying to me a few minutes ago, 2016 is when they started blowing up around here, right?
Yeah, and that was because the federal government actually, in all their grants and stuff that they've allotted towards addiction and recovery, they opened it up to these needle exchange facilities. So that enabled them to kind of get financially stable and just financed. They do work a lot on volunteers, but needless to say, since 2016, they've started to pop up a little bit. It's pretty common.
A lot of nonprofits
and
utilize volunteers to some extent. But one thing, since we were talking about finances, that we might as well throw out there real quick is the majority of these needle exchanges are taxpayer funded, right? They
ultimately, yes.
Ultimately, which in the past has led to some people. That's been one of the criticisms, right? Is that this comes out of the taxpayer's pocket.
Why should I pay for it?
Why should I pay
They
for
made
it?
that
Right.
choice.
Yeah, that's
that
exactly right. So, but what we're finding, in fact, the World Health Organization released a study a long time ago in 2004 that says they're absolutely cost effective. And one of the reasons it's cost effective, and you had a ratio that I'll ask you to talk about in just a second, but one of the reasons it's cost effective is disease spreads so prevalently through these needles, right? HIV, hepatitis, and then other infections like endocarditis are often a result of dirty needles.
Right.
So it's much cheaper to do something like give away a hypodermic needle, which costs about 10 cents to produce, and even tack on other services that a lot of these places will offer condoms, for example.
That's a common one, yes.
Yeah, so they offer a lot of different things, but even all that considered, it's much cheaper to do it that way than pay for somebody who's in the ER for 2 months because the lining of their heart has an infection, right? And you got to dose them up with antibiotics and keep them in the ICU.
Yep, and it goes above and beyond that, and I'll talk a little bit about that ratio. They use an example of HIV. So a lot of these needle exchange places have seen, they took I think it was out in San Francisco, they had approximately 25,000 people that were shooting heroin, and they're saying that there was only 30 cases of HIV amongst that 25,000 that were actually going to these facilities. So there was a huge drop. So what that basically means is, you talked a little bit about the cost of a needle. There's the cost, the lease of the building, the utilities, whatever costs, all together, what the bottom line is to run one of these places is still, the ratio is for one person. Like that cost is 6 times that if they were to come down with hepatitis C or HIV.
Yeah.
So it's a 6 to 1. You're saving huge amounts of money. So that's one of the main reasons they do it is, Tim mentioned the harm reduction. And that's the biggest thing that they were worried about at the very beginning. That's what kind of kicked these all off. And I think now, on top of that, they've kind of moved to testing the heroin because of the fentanyl and the carfentanil. That's a big thing right now. People are getting this stuff and they don't know what's in it, and they're actually testing it there before they actually use it.
Which that kind of surprises me a little bit. I think it's great, but I would be hard pressed. Picturing myself giving up a sample to those. I think it's great that they offer that service.
Mhm.
But if I had a $20 bag of dope, I'm probably not sharing any so that I can be told
Right.
it's super
Yeah.
right and
We
pure.
we gotta
pure.
take this.
Yeah,
Right.
no, there's too much fentanyl in that for you.
Right.
That's what I was hoping. Give it back.
Right.
But no, it is a good service. Another one of the pros to it that I saw was, although it's not treatment, it's harm reduction. You can use it to recruit people into treatment.
It's an inlet. I mean,
Right.
you can't like go. I get what you're totally on track with that. You can't go out in the streets and be like, "Hey, you, and you. Here's a clean needle. Come with me. We're going to rehab." It don't work that way. They get to build a rapport with them when
Right.
they come in and check in, and they have to, show their ID. They check in, sign in. They get their needle exchange, and then you get that rapport, so you can actually open up to them. You say, hey, this and this is going on, and they have resources there. So you automatically are gaining trust and a rapport with these people that you can eventually help.
Right. And anybody, like anything you do in social work, you get trainings depending on what it is you're doing. But one of the things you learn very quickly is, regardless of all the other tools you're given and taught, your number one tool is just yourself, your relationship with that
Absolutely.
person. And over time, if you continue to see these people, it gives you an opportunity to kind of open up and tell them what more you have to offer. Because eventually, every addict, if they live long enough, gets to the point where they want help. Whether or not they're really ready to accept it is one thing, but they want it. And by having these outreach programs, you're putting yourself in a position to be that person when they're ready that they may come talk to.
Well, and I think too, they're already going there knowing that right? So that makes it a little easier to get over the embarrassment or whatever that entails. But just that rapport, and they know that and it's much easier to go ahead and ask for help or just be open to it. And I think that's the major thing that they try to accomplish above and beyond the harm reduction. But see, what you're seeing a lot now is these facilities with these needle exchange programs in the United States. They actually, I was reading about one, and what it is, you go in, you check in, you get your needle, and then they go right to the back room, and there's 2 bathrooms there. There's timers on the door, right? So when someone goes into that bathroom to use, there's a volunteer medical professional outside the door, and when that timer goes off after 3 minutes, they're knocking on the door to make sure they're okay. They're saying that has reduced the amount of overdoses, and it was in West Virginia where this became huge, because West Virginia is one of the states that was really, really battling the overdose problem.
Right. Yeah, those mountain states.
Yeah, so it kind of like took off from there, and so they're going in there, and they were able to, if they didn't respond, they had a key, and they would open the door, call 911, and they were all trained in Narcan. So that was the benefit of that. On the flip side, there's a lot of negative things to be said about it, as far as how it was taken in the community itself. But we'll get to that. A lot of things that you have to understand is there's legal issues in these. The needle exchange is good, right? We're good. That's all legal. That's funded. It's okayed by the federal government. But when you start getting into these safe injection sites, that's where our country has a problem. And I think we're working towards that direction. It's a legal issue. Like, as law enforcement, and that this is a safe injection site, right? And you see people walking in the door, well, they got dope on them.
Right.
So they're breaking the law, right? So what do you do at that point? But you also know that they're going into a place where they can eventually get help or agree to get help. They're not throwing the needles out in the playground or in the side of the street where kids can get it or whatever. It's a whole, like, it's kind of a concept where you don't know, like, what would I do in that situation? That's a tough call. And I think that's where we're, as a country, kind of torn right now.
I think it's inevitable that some places will experiment with it. I think it's worth experimenting with. Before I lose the point, I want to backtrack a little bit to something Katrina said, where she mentioned a lot of places won't sell you clean rigs unless you have a prescription.
Yeah.
And that is true. And I did a little research on that. And one of the reasons I learned that that's the case is because, for example, Meyer had somebody overdose in their bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they look at it from like a liability standpoint. So they don't want to invite that problem into their store, which I understand. But the reason I bring it up is to speak to the point where it is like legal. You can buy these needles. It's just not every place will sell you one. Right? It's not illegal to have them.
No, and that's key, the liability. They sell you a needle at the pharmacy, and you go into the bathroom and overdose. Yeah, now they have like, who sold them this? Who's holding this stuff, right?
And I never could wait. As soon as I got mine, and I never shot up, but as soon as I got my drugs, I used them immediately. Mm-hmm. Like I would not go home first, or I would not go to the park and find a nice place to relax.
Mm-hmm.
I would do it right there in the car on the spot.
And that's a very good point, because that was one of the things that they brought up on the negative side of these needle exchanges, was that when they actually were buying their stuff on the street, they wouldn't wait until they made it to these needle exchange centers, right? So they didn't want to wait.
Right.
And that became a problem, because they'd see people come in maybe once, twice, and then disappear. And they interviewed a lot of these people after they went to rehab and got the inside take on everything. And they realized, yeah, that's a hurdle, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And, I oftentimes had just enough gas in my car to go get the drugs.
Well, you didn't spend your money on gas.
Back home. I spent just the bare minimum, hoping I wouldn't run out. So, like, depending on where these sites are located,
mm-hmm.
convenience is always hugely important to an addict. Probably not going to go to the other side of town, practically speaking. It's probably going to be like an outreach that's effective in that particular neighborhood, but it's not going to draw traffic from all over the city, right? And so I believe in Detroit there are a lot of such sites
mm-hmm.
for that reason, right? In Flint, I think there's one. But even in a city that size, that probably isn't quite enough. They could probably stand to have a second.
Yeah, I agree.
A lot of addicts are on foot.
Right.
They can't, and that's another thing. It's like, you're not gonna
spend money on a taxi or an Uber to go get a clean needle, right?
Or even stand there waiting for the bus.
Exactly.
To do, at least not on a regular basis. I think like not every time you use. I do think they'll go to pick them up to get the needles, because you got to get them somehow.
And they literally do the exchange, and then they give you a few more things on top of it. But it's a great concept if there's enough of them. And I think that's your point. And I think we're eventually going to get there with that whole thing. But on the flip side, a lot of communities are fighting them, because now they're saying that crime's going up around these exchange centers, or even other countries. They've seen where these safe injection sites start out great, and then they just kind of deteriorate, and the next thing you know, it's basically a trap house outside of it. So the dealers are right outside. The police don't mess with it because it's a safe injection site.
Sure.
So it's a safe haven for everybody.
Right. For everybody.
Everybody.
For anybody who wants to set up shop and sell also would be drawn to that.
Yes. And I can tell you from the law enforcement side of it, we're happy if there's clean needles being used, right? Because a lot of times when you arrest somebody and you pat them down, and you worry about that if you know that they use in that form. Like, you have to worry about it.
Yeah. I'm going to try. I haven't done this before. I'm going to try to show a picture. I know it might not work great with this camera.
You want me to do it?
Yeah. This is a needle my brother found in Detroit. To give people like a visual aid.
All right, bear with me. That's not going to work.
Yeah. You can see it's bent up.
Not going to work.
And Joe can probably attest to the fact that the needle itself is rust colored, right?
Yeah, I'll describe it to you. It's bent. It looks like a little blood on the syringe part of it, and then the needle is rusty.
So is it any wonder that people get sick? Because an addict isn't going to say, wait until they come across a clean needle in a couple days.
Oh no,
they're not going to. I mean, this is why people share needles, right? Like, because sometimes it's that or nothing.
Right.
So it's just like, and you know what I'll do is I'll post a picture in the comments because it was one of the best.
No, that's a good
visual aids.
Absolutely.
You know, like
it's pretty detailed. It's a close up.
It's jarring to think that somebody would stick that into their body. And so, to me, it's one of the best arguments, that picture for.
Yep, Terry's saying, in Flint there was the wellness center did the needle exchange, and she's saying an addict is going to use if having a clean needle or not, and that's a very good point, because that was the response that they got when they interviewed people that had gone through rehab and were in recovery and started. They mixed it up. Some of them that have used that and some of them that hadn't, and they asked, why wouldn't you? And then the other ones, they asked, why'd you stop going? And so they got a lot of cool answers, and very thorough answers. And that was it. And yeah, Terry, you hit it right on the head. A lot of them said as soon as they get their stuff, that's it. They don't, it doesn't matter. They're not going to go 2 blocks over. They're not going to go 4 miles over, because it's a problem, as Tim said. The transportation, for one, the timing, not good. Because we were talking earlier, and it's like he said, you got to fight that dope sickness too.
Right.
So you're in a hurry, and a lot of times, so waiting to get a ride or whatever is not going to happen.
One thing I'll say too is I didn't know a whole lot of people in the NA or AA community that had like HIV, but I knew a whole lot of people that had acquired hepatitis.
Yeah, that's very common.
Yeah, through dirty needles, man, like that. There's a lot.
And then there's a lot on the after end of that too, which is with hepatitis C. That's one of the things that can keep you from, like, if you were to go to Vivitrol option. That's one of the things that would,
I didn't know that,
disqualify you.
Hepatitis C disqualifies you.
And
wow.
Well, they have to work on your liver levels.
First.
Yep. Yeah. And if they can get it to a certain level, then you're okay. But I've seen a lot not be able to go on the Vivitrol when they truly wanted to, because of the fact that they had hepatitis C.
And again, like, hepatitis treatment is available. Yes. I forget which of the ones that like are particularly easy to treat, but it's expensive, and the cost of paying for somebody's hepatitis, I don't even think that's covered by like Medicaid, frankly, and that's what a lot of addicts have is Medicaid. So even private insurance though, because the premiums always get passed along. Yeah. So it's much cheaper to give somebody a needle than.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we wanted to also hit on was, I just read that comment from Terry.
Yeah, that's crazy, Terry.
So these safe injection sites, I think, like, really statistically, the Netherlands have the most, which I would have never suspected. But they have the most. They're very thorough. They're very controlled, we'll put it that way. So it is a setup, and it has to be run right. And I had a discussion with someone from Australia, and she was the one that said, they became like basically trap houses turned inside out.
Right.
And the crime was up. It was, the police didn't want to go there because it was like not for them to get involved with, right?
Sure.
But yet there's all this other stuff they took advantage of. So like I said, it was a safe haven for everybody.
Everybody. Yeah. If the police get involved, nobody will go at all.
Right.
On either side of that.
Exactly.
Right. Because one of the things addicts worry about, even less so nowadays, but in the past, they'd be afraid to even call up their friend had overdosed for fear that the police would come and bust them, whether it was on a warrant or they had a needle that they weren't ready to get rid of.
Well, and you see that a lot too, is when there's a party and someone overdoses, and there's drugs there, there's needles there, there's whatever, bags of weed. underage drinking, whatever the case may be. They passed a law, at least here in Michigan, where if you make that call to save a life, they're not going to like search you and charge you. Like, I mean, I would advise getting rid of it, but they're not going to come in there and be like, okay, we know he had some because he overdosed and we just had to Narcan him, so you must have it. That's not how it works.
Anymore.
Right. But it used to be, and that would be like, people would not call because they didn't want to get in trouble, and then you have someone who dies of overdose because nobody could show up to give them the Narcan.
Right.
And they've since changed that. It's one of the smarter things they've done, because obviously you kind of hang out with who you are, and that goes for recovery as well, right?
Absolutely.
It goes with everybody.
Absolutely.
You are who you hang out with.
You are.
Yeah. And just by, guilty by association, in that case. And now that law has helped. You see, we do get a lot more calls, and a lot more lives are saved that way.
One area of concern, one of the supposed potential cons of a needle exchange, and I'm sure a safe injection site, and I would really be eager to hear from people on this particular topic, Terry and Katrina in particular. Is it enabling, right? That was one of the big drawbacks.
I've seen that. Good point. Good point.
Is it enabling? Are we just making it easier for the addict to use? Is it, should we not be doing it because all we're doing?
And that was one of the common complaints. Like, the federal government is enabling people,
right?
And it's still illegal. But yeah, that's a whole different perspective.
Personally, I don't think so. And this is actually, I kind of wish we had Katie in here, because Katie talked about enabling the other day, and talked about just the importance of like sticking with your loved one and not going maybe for the traditional definition of what enabling is, or being discouraged away from just loving that person.
Do you want to hear my opinion?
Well, no, but I think they probably do. So,
and if they don't, they're going to hear it anyway.
They're going to hear it anyway. Right.
No, my opinion is not enabling.
Okay.
And for the simple reason that they're coming there with their dope already in their pocket.
Right. So
I can't say that's enabling. And as Terry said in her previous comment, was they're going to use regardless. So why not not only just do what we can for the harm reduction side of it, but also it's a cost factor. It's a win-win. Like, it's a win for everybody. So yeah, that's a tough one to argue against.
Yeah, and I tend to feel that enabling is kind of overblown. Like, because of the whole mentality, I was going to find a way. It was just, who was I going to steal from? Who was I going to manipulate?
Right.
How long was it going to take me?
And every day an idiot wakes up.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. So yeah, no, I think a lot of times what people are doing when they are perceived to be enabling is a form of harm reduction in itself, right? People are trying to protect their loved ones from engaging in some of the risky behaviors that go along with drug use, right? Sometimes people will give their child money so that they don't maybe turn a trick or steal
and end up
rob.
in a terrible jail, and
right. And so and it makes sense. I'm not saying it's right either way, but I can see why parents think to themselves, well, my child's gonna use it anyway, right?
And I think we have to look at the situational aspect of it. And for those of you who didn't see the video with Katie as our guest, I highly suggest you go check that out.
One of the best.
One of the best perspectives you'll ever get. Katie's awesome. She does a lot of speaking. She's a life coach. She's written a book. But she has a great perspective on the enabler. And we were happy to have her. It was a good show.
It was a great show.
Yeah.
And I've always been I've always felt grateful that my parents didn't err on the side of tough love, right? Like they just tried to be loving instead of having the tough love approach. And again, one of the things we harp on all the time on the show is everything is situational. And it's so if there were a cookie cutter solution, there wouldn't be a problem, right? Because we just give you the recipe to fix it. So it's every situation is different. And when I say I don't believe in tough love, I also try to always remember to add the caveat of I do believe in healthy boundaries. You still have to protect yourself, and because if you're not taking care of yourself, you're no good to anyone else anyway.
Yeah. Terry brought up the question of she's heard of safe injection sites in Canada. Are there any in the U.S.? Well, technically no. But what they're finding is, I talked about it earlier, is these needle exchange places, they'll have an area, well, they provide certain services. Of course, they offer the rehab therapy. They even sign you up for Medicaid, that kind of stuff. They point you in the right direction for health issues such as hepatitis C and all that. They pass out condoms. They have coffee. So you'll walk in and you got to check in. And then once you sign in, there's like that hangout area where people hang out. They have a cup of coffee. They talk to a counselor type thing. And then in the back is where they're doing this. You could almost call it illegal safe injection sites. And that's where those 2 bathrooms came in. And
well-intentioned.
Yeah, well-intentioned. And it was just, it's not on the up and up as far as funding and law and all that. And I think that's going to be something that's going to come up in the near future because it is successful in a lot of other countries.
The one thing I'm not prepared to answer, one of the things I'm not prepared to answer that I wish I had a better grip on was whether or not this can be determined on a state level, right? Like, is it a federal reason that there's no safe injection sites? Can Michigan decide, you know what, we're going to make ourselves a guinea pig and we're going to put a couple of these in Detroit and see how they go? Or can they not do that without cooperation from the federal government? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I think
have to figure it out.
A lot of the funding would come from the federal government.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's where they would cut them off.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and you just talked about all the things that these outreaches offer, like signing people up for health insurance. You know, at my job, I help people move toward finding assistance with housing, right? Housing vouchers.
Yeah.
And so one of the biggest pros for these needle exchanges is the fact that they do enable society to reach difficult to reach populations, right? And the analogy I want to make is I worked at 4 or 5 different Starbucks stores. That's where I met my son's mom. And Starbucks, when operated properly, gives really, really good customer service.
Yeah.
Because that's what they're selling as much, if not more, than an actual product. People love, and I always think to the Grosse Pointe store I worked in, because we didn't have a drive-through in that store. So everybody came in. And you saw, I remember Bill Ford Jr. would come in. Members of the Detroit mayor's staff would come in. People love getting that recognition, right? That you know their name. You don't even ask them
what they want.
Right. You just write Candia down on a cup and you slide it to your coworker.
It's kind of like me rolling through Tim Hortons. I don't even have
Exactly,
to
right. Yeah. I've been there. I've seen it.
Yeah.
So people like that. When you have a job and you have your life together, those are the kind we talked about, like you are who you surround yourself by, right? Those are one of the niceties that you can afford yourself when you're doing the right things in life. You can afford to go to a Starbucks and you can be a part of that. For somebody who's struggling with addiction, they will go to these sites because of the familiarity and the sense of belonging. It's the same thing happens in that world, like in a trap house, sad though it may be. That becomes your sort of family. That becomes your world.
Your safe haven.
Your safe haven. You're familiar with these people. You get
comfort zone.
Your comfort zone. You get to know these people. So a needle exchange is like a step in the right direction.
Yes.
Because at least there, you're interacting with people who aren't trying to make a dollar off you or commiserate with you, but who are actually trying to help you change your life.
There's nothing you have to give up to walk into a place, a needle exchange, and benefit. Like, you don't have to pay money. The only thing you have to do is sign in, and that's all that's required. And that's only a formality for them to keep track of who's coming in, what time, and how many.
Right.
But other than that, you don't have to go in. You don't have to like sit there and say, "I swear I'm going to go to rehab."
Right. Right.
You just have to like go in, and yeah. And that was one of the things that a lot of them said was the downfall. Was they knew when they went there they were going to get approached about, hey, when are you ready for rehab?
Right.
Are you ready today?
Yep.
And that was
they got a bed.
Yep.
I
that
can
was
get you there.
I just
tomorrow
talked to
morning.
him, right? And that was a huge deterrent for a lot of them. And it's you hit it right on the head earlier. Was when at some point every addict thinks to themselves, I need to get help.
Right.
And they're hoping just to get that open window of opportunity. That day when you walk in for a needle, that they can hit you up and you're like, yeah, you know what? I don't want to do this shit anymore.
Right. It's such a fleeting window that
Hey, Ashley.
if we don't act, it disappears quick. So
Yeah.
we got to take advantage of it. You know, I the number of times I went to rehab was twice. The number of times I was willing to go to rehab was probably hundreds. The number of times that willingness lasted for more than 15 to 20 minutes was probably only a couple dozen.
And we've said it before. It's
It goes
usually
quick.
it's a lot of those times that you're willing to, especially those short-lived ones, are because you were cornered
Right.
or in a bad situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Broke.
Yeah. Like
Like I might as well just go to detox.
yeah. Might as well get it over with.
Right. Yeah. And so back to that point of just that's why, and this wasn't like really something I found through researching. It's just something I know from my experience as a social worker, as an addict, as somebody who gave customer service. That's why these programs, I think, where their value lies is you build those relationships with people and you become part of their world, part of their extended family, so to speak, and position yourself to help them when they're finally ready.
Right. And they know that you may ask them a million times if they're ready for rehab, but they know above and beyond that, okay, until I say I'm ready, they're not going to like throw me in handcuffs and throw me out the back door in a patrol car and take me to rehab.
And they know you care. And
Right.
so many addicts feel like nobody cares about me, right? Even though you deep down know, like, okay, my parents love me, they're just mad at me.
Well, everybody likes free shit.
Yes, right.
And we all often say ain't shit for
Trump
free.
check.
Yeah,
Sorry.
ain't shit for free, right?
Yeah.
But in reality there is, and it's usually something that you're willing to do to help somebody. That's free. That's
Right.
always free,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of them had said that they felt that connection that you were just talking about. They knew that there was, that initial pressure, but then they looked at the bigger picture and said, okay, but I'm getting a clean needle. They care if I show up today or not, right?
Right.
They're worried about me. Whereas some family members may have been like you said earlier, tough love, get out, right?
Right.
And
they
so
know you
there is
don't,
that connection's there.
you don't, the fact that they know you don't. Trust is built over time. But so many of us in the game are used to every relationship has an angle, whether it's with your dealer, with who you're using with.
Could be with law enforcement. We get that all the time.
Everything's an angle.
Yeah.
So to go into a place like this where the only angle is this person is wholly invested in helping me, whether or not I want to receive that help is another matter.
But they don't care.
They don't care.
Yeah.
But to have that in their lives, I think makes a big difference because it kind of reminds you that like people do care. You may feel like an outcast and you may feel shut off from your family. You may be shut off from your family, but that doesn't mean there aren't people who don't care, and help is out there. And that's a kind of like in your face reminder to somebody who wants to say otherwise to themselves, because it's easy sometimes to say nobody gives a shit.
Right.
And then you can justify your using that way.
Or you
It's
can
harder
or you can justify stealing
anything.
or yeah.
It's a lot harder to say like my family really loves me and then go use, right?
Right.
It's easier to say, they don't care about me anyway.
They don't
Nobody
care
cares
about me, so why should I care about them? Throw the needle in the playground or
Right.
And you're right. You can justify a lot of negative actions by negative feelings.
Yeah. So to be able, like, that's one of the things I like about the job I have is I'm really just like hanging out with people, and I'm not trying to push. We have plenty of people who need rehab that come to my
Yeah.
job, and they know it, and they know what I've been through. But I'm not trying to talk them into going to rehab every day because I know that's a lost cause. All I'm trying to do is just build an authentic, genuine relationship with them. To maybe they never get rehab. Maybe they never do get help. Maybe they don't make it long enough to. It doesn't mean they deserve hepatitis C,
Right.
or they deserve to be shunned from society.
But again, you're opening the door for that day that maybe they do wake up and say, I can't do this shit anymore.
That's the ultimate hope.
Yeah. And then they come to you and
Right.
say, hey,
And
you got that rapport.
I've convinced 2 people to get the Vivitrol shot.
Mhm.
Neither one of them stuck with it for as long as I would have liked.
I convinced 36 people.
Yeah, that's because they're in quarantine when you get to them. But no, I mean, and that's awesome. But like, even convincing one is a great feeling, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure the first one you convinced to try it, you're like, this is amazing. Like this,
Right.
I'm helping this
Well,
person to have a fighting chance.
Especially when they get back with you and they're like, they tell you they're doing well, they made it through rehab, they're in counseling, they found a job or they found housing, they have insurance, they're taking care of themselves, and it's the baby steps and whatnot. And we talk about that all the time, short-term, long-term goals, but they can actually focus on that. That's a great feeling when you know that you were able to help somebody that was wanting help.
Right.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say forced onto the shot, but strongly encouraged. And I was kind of resistant to it at first. Immediately, it changed my life so much that I've become an ambassador just like you have, just we're on different fronts of the war.
Right.
But it's one of my favorite things to do is to convince people to take that. And we're getting a little bit away from needle exchanges here, but any of these, like, one of the things I found in the research is that the attitudes of needle exchanges being a bad thing seem to be getting outdated, right? Like, people are coming around to the idea that, in fact, that World Health Organization report that I alluded to earlier said there is no evidence whatsoever of any negative consequence whatsoever. You can try to say, like, well, they become like dens for criminal activity, but all you're doing in that case is just relocating it anyway. It's not like you're creating a trap house.
And that was the biggest issue, was the communities themselves. If maybe they just didn't see that the issue was there, because if you can put a needle exchange in the middle of a city and it's being visited and quite well, okay, that obviously, like we talked about earlier, that transportation only goes like so far. Like they're within walking distance of that center. So the people that say, yeah, we don't need that because we don't have that problem, yeah, they're blinded or just not seeing it, because as soon as they pop those centers up and establish them, there's people going. So yeah, you're not entirely accurate with that statement.
Right.
And that was the biggest thing, was communities were fighting them because they're like, that's a black eye on our community. Our housing value is going to go down. This and that. We're going to start being, they're going to be robbing us. And
I'll be honest that I can understand where if I lived in a city, that I might not want those put into my name. I might not want one.
How would you feel? How would you feel if they put one in next door to where you live right now?
Okay, I'm a recovering addict, and I'd be cool with it, right? But I don't have a lot of property to protect. It's not like it's next to my mansion.
That's the point.
I'd be good with it because it'd give me an opportunity to work with those people, right?
Hey, Lisa,
I love it. So I would think it'd be awesome.
Okay, so let me rephrase this. How would you feel about? I know a lot of times, like the last time we did our show, your son was at home and he was playing NBA, right?
He was.
He said, "Screw you, Dad. I'm not going."
He normally comes.
Break a leg. I'll see you when you get home, right?
Yep.
So let's say you have a needle exchange center right next to where you live, and your son was like, "Go break a leg, Dad. I'll catch you when you get back." He's 13 years old, and you know that there is the potential for something to happen. It could be a fight over some old money, some old drugs. It could be a lot of things. police show up to arrest somebody.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely brings it home.
And that's what
I don't want to be dismissive of that and say like it wouldn't factor into my thinking, right? Because it would. But I subjected him to a lot more dangerous situations than that. And it's been a policy of mine since he was very young to not shield him from much.
Hey, Kelly.
Obviously, if I'm worried about his physical safety, because what happens is some neighborhoods get hotter at sometimes than others, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
if there's something going on, I have to admit, like something happened semi-recently that set the block on edge, I'd take that into consideration. But as a rule, man, like I think he's like a teenager, right? Like
Yeah.
All you can do is your best.
Yeah, and I honestly don't think that would impact you a whole lot. But that was the big struggle with a lot of communities. Like they were blind to the fact that there is a problem in their city.
Yeah, and this
or
puts it
in
on
their-
Front Street.
Yeah, and now they put this center there, and they're passing out free needles, and the block is hot. The block.
Well, Rich.
Yeah. So
You know what else has that same effect? Methadone clinics. People
Yes.
don't realize what a problem their community has
until boom.
until like people flood off the bus and all go to the same destination, and there's like a little like capsule on the sign. People are like, "What's that? Like,
Right.
is that a doctor's office?" And they figure out, not exactly.
Yeah.
And then they really have to confront what's really going on. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and that was a big battle with a lot of communities, and I think that's where it's going to come into play with this federal government, with all the grant money, making that transition from needle exchange to safe injection sites that incorporate the needle exchange. That I think we're going to see. I truly think we're going to see it. I think it's a matter of how they set it up that's going to dictate if it becomes an inside-out trap house or if it's very effective like it is in some countries.
Yeah, and I hope they do. And
Hey, Katrina.
as soon as I can, hey, what's up, Katrina? I would love to work at a safe injection site, right? Because something I heard a while back that really resonated with me is if you want an interesting life, make interesting choices. One of my goals is to write and to make money that way. And then I have small business hopes too. But when it comes to like social work, I'd like to have a very like varied career. I don't want to stay in any one place for too long. I really would like the opportunity to work at a place like that because it would give me a new perspective. Think about things that probably aren't occurring to either one of us right now. And that would help me along my way just advocate for change, you know? So I hope, man, I think it'd be great. I would love to work for a needle exchange, even if it's just part-time or volunteer. I'd be willing to do that too.
And I think one of the biggest downfalls of this whole COVID-19 is it's going to take the focus off of some of these topics that were going to be extremely hot in the debates for the presidential election. I think like battling the addiction and supporting the recovery was going to be, I think that was going to be a hot topic because I think both parties, I think everybody as a whole can agree we have to make some changes, and there are some changes that have happened. We've talked about them, but I think everybody's in agreement that there has to be more done in that direction, and it's just going to be one of the negative impacts that COVID-19 has is a lot of the topics and things that need to be addressed are not going to be
get pushed to the back burner,
and it's going to be pointing fingers at who screwed up what during this whole process, but it's going to happen.
One thing that I think is important to tell somebody early in recovery who's struggling is like progress, not perfection, right? Yes. I know I hear from people sometimes like about a relapse and they'll be frustrated because they'll have sacrificed their clean time or
maybe their job and maybe
who knows the damage, right? And I try to remind those people like you're making progress, right? You didn't like ruin everything overnight. It's going to take a while to get it turned around.
As long as you learn from it, right?
Right. Like, hey, you're here to fight another day. Like clean time. It is to be recognized and respected, but it is also at the same time just a number, right? And the number that really matters is today. what some of the wisest people that I knew in the program, in my opinion, when you would ask them how long they had been clean, they would refer to the time they woke up that day, right? Because they may have had 25 years, but all that really mattered was they had been clean since 6:52 a.m.
And that's a brilliant way of putting it. One of the other things that I posted it on our Facebook page, and for those of you that didn't see it, it says it doesn't matter how deep the hole you dug may be.
That was one of your best yet.
Yeah.
Did you see that somewhere?
Well, let me finish. Those that didn't see it.
Okay.
It's no matter how deep the hole you dug may be, it's only 12 steps to get out.
I thought I was going to have to finish for you.
Yeah, you thought I was waiting for you.
12 steps.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it is, Georgia. You're still alive, can start again. And as long as you learn from those mistakes, and relapse is part of the progress, right?
Well, they say relapse is part of recovery.
Exactly. And it's going to happen. Nobody's ever gone through it one time.
I know.
Because if
nobody.
If it was possible, guess what? We'd have to take some DNA samples and figure out what the heck. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not. Hey, Liz. But yeah, it's a difficult thing to get through because a lot of times in that relapse, you lose a lot of things. You may end up back in jail. You may, like with kids, and there's all kinds of perspectives that come in play. But as long as you learn from it, and if you were hanging around the wrong people or the wrong area, and as much as we hate this word trigger, that happened, next time, okay, I can't be around these people, or I can't be over in this area of town, or whatever
Sure.
it is.
Yeah. Just we're here to. I mean, you live to fight another day, right? The key is that you don't give up, right? Don't let one mistake trip you up and lead to a second mistake. You talked about that number of the 6-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
Okay. This other number, I didn't want to, because I think numbers are so powerful. So I don't want to close the show before throwing this out here. It says the cost of preventing HIV infection through needle exchange programs range from $4,000 to $12,000 compared to treatment for a patient that can cost up to $190,000. Right?
And I don't even think that's accurate because a lot of those meds are like.
You'd think it'd be way more.
Yeah.
But it's still a staggering number
it
of
is.
like 20 times, right? Maybe 20 to 40 times more expensive. So just another quick vote for the fact that
it's worth it.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely worth it.
And you're looking at, at some point you're limiting, like we said, you're limiting options for recovery, such as Vivitrol. And there's so many different things that could happen. You're actually risking your life with a lot of these infections that could come from a dirty needle. So those are all, when someone says, we're paying to enable someone. No, you're paying to not pay later.
Right. Yeah.
If you want to look at it like that, you're paying less.
Again, they're gonna use.
Yeah.
And really, like, how do you put a price? Well, it's difficult in my mind to put a price on helping people, right? Because anything good has a cost, right? Nothing good in life is free. So even if it weren't like these numbers we were throwing out, 6-to-1 or 190,000 to 4,000,
1 to 2.
Yeah, it's still like you're still investing money in helping people.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be a bad thing.
Yeah, for sure. And Rich, not starting over is worse on your mind. 100. Yep. Yeah. So it's Terry put the more time you have, the more it hurts for her anyway. I hear that a lot. I really do. But again, it reverts back to how to get to where you were, right? And you know how not to get to where you just ended up. And that should be the learning process on that whole thing. Even if you have to make a journal, write it down. Like once if you do relapse, once you detox and are starting to think a little straight again, write that down. Like what led you to that point?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Write it down and not just write it down like hung out with Bob. Yeah, screw Bob. What made you get to? There were other underlying issues that made you go hang out with Bob, right? Whether it be stress or
if the dope drove you to the 12-step meeting, what drove you to the dope, right? So
that's it.
something caused you to pick up. It didn't happen on a whim. So it's a opportunity to analyze and grow. And that's easier said than done. It's just something else we've said recently is crisis is opportunity, right? And a relapse is a crisis, but it's also an opportunity. Don't forget the past nor shut the door on it.
That's it. Don't forget the past or shut the door on it. That's very, very true. But one thing I'd like to add as far as a law enforcement perspective, on these needle exchanges, that doesn't impact us so much. But when we start getting into the safe injection sites, that does, because like I said before at the beginning, we know that someone's walking in that door that they have dope in their pocket, right? We know that. So until they change that law, and how do you do that, right? So does it go from within a certain amount of feet from that building, or does it go, if you're on your way to the building?
It's like the school zones.
Are we going to say essential and non-essential needles? I mean, where are we going?
That's definitely a hard nuance to figure out how to govern that.
But other countries have done it, so it can be done.
It can be done, and just because it's complicated doesn't mean that's reason not to try.
Okay, so Rich he got here a little late. That's all right. So did a few other people. These safe injection sites, right? They're sites, and they're not here, but they're in a lot of other countries. And in like the Netherlands, they have a very successful program in many of them. But what it is a facility set up where you can actually go in and inject, right? So you get your dope wherever,
coke.
You go in there, you sign in, they give you a clean needle. There's counselors there, there's therapists there, there's medical staff there. They even test your dope for you in some facilities to make sure that there's not, it's not like fentanyl or carfentanil where you're gonna die. Then they're monitoring you when you inject and afterwards. So if you do overdose, they are all trained in Narcan and CPR and reviving people, and they get a hold of 911. It drastically reduces the overdose deaths. It's just one of those things that in America, we haven't gotten that far yet. We do have the needle exchange facilities. That's where you can just basically, without the injection, but they are, I read there are some places where that is the case. It's just kind of on the down low. But for the most part, it's a needle exchange with all the other services minus the injection.
I think antecedent was the word I was looking for before, or like the needle exchange is like an antecedent to a injection site, right? Like it just came first, but like the injection site is the natural progression of that idea that we're not just going to give you the needle, but go ahead and use it here too, so we can make sure that you walk away from this experience alive.
And it's really important to highlight the fact that these exchange places, they, Rich, go back when we're done and watch the whole entire video. We hit on that.
Is it heavily enabling, right? Yeah, the question of it being enabling.
Yeah. Go ahead and watch the video when we're done here, and we walk all through that whole process.
And it's a good, totally valid question.
So backing up to these needle exchange things, initially they were meant to mainly reduce the cases of hepatitis C, HIV, whatnot. They were handing out fresh needles, new needles, clean needles, and condoms. That was the other thing they're handing out. Maybe a little bit of literature. That progressed into therapists being on board, people volunteering, connections to rehab. So it kind of just steamrolled into, now they're taking advantage of that inlet. And we talked about how you build that rapport and everything. And now they're able to offer many more programs and services in the way of Medicare, Medicaid, rehab, housing. They even get you ID if you don't have an ID. They work with you on all those little things that get you maybe baby steps towards rehab, which is a good thing. So they are progressing, and maybe one day we will see those safe injection sites popping up all over America.
And I hope so. I hope so.
And it'll be interesting to see the take on that from a lot of the communities. But
one of the things too, Rich, is I know when I talk to people and I'm encouraging them to get help for alcoholism or what have you, they'll tell me how they don't want to go to AA. They don't like AA. They don't like NA. They don't want anything to do with any of the 12 step stuff. One of my responses to that typically is, okay, that's cool, but if not that, then what? If you're not going to go to AA, tell me, what are you going to do to try to get help?
Well, the most common thing you see is that way is not going to work for me. Well, have you tried it? No, I know what works for me.
Yeah, I know what works for me.
But what worked for you to get you right back here,
right?
And that's where people have to kind of break that cycle and look at options, and those options need to be available for them to even look at. So that's where they're making a lot of progress in those centers.
Yeah, and so I guess what I'm saying is, if not safe injection site, then what, right? And if you have a better idea, I'll tout it. I'll be an advocate.
Well, now you're talking, if it's not safe injection site, you're talking what's going on now. Bathrooms of restaurants, bathrooms of stores, playgrounds, and all that those needles and all that stuff is happening. The overdoses are happening in parking lots, bathrooms. People are walking in like, holy shit. And then the fast food places are being trained in Narcan. That's the extreme of it, right?
Have you seen these pictures going around of people who are like coming out of grocery stores and just throwing their gloves like in the parking lot?
In the masks,
just throwing them down.
That's what it's like.
That's exactly what it's like. Those images are circulating right now in light of this crisis, but that same dynamic phenomenon has been going on forever when it comes to needles, right?
Yeah, I watched a documentary where they actually cleaned up a riverbank, and it was, I can't remember what city it was, but they pulled, within 3 hours, they pulled over 30 pounds of needles. That's a lot of needles.
Well, I will say, and one of the things this study found is it's not always an exchange as much as they're just giving you clean needles, right?
Good point, yeah.
Why is that? I think if you don't want people to just discard their needles wherever they use them, then you got to stop charging them if you find a needle with heroin in it, right? You have to decriminalize that, because otherwise you're not going to carry a felony around with you, so that some kid you don't know might step on it. Unfortunately, we tend not to be responsible.
Yeah, and even they say exchange, it's really not. They encourage you that you bring it, and that's why that one facility claimed that they let them shoot up in the bathrooms in the back with the timers and the medical staff watching, to keep those needles in house, as well as the safety. You can call it safety if you want, but at least eliminating that possibility of.
Because a dirty needle, sanitation workers, law enforcement, children, there are all kinds of people can be impacted by that.
Yeah, so elderly.
That is another reason to have a safe injection site.
So with that, we'll wrap it up. We want to thank everybody for tuning in. As soon as we close out here, share this, get it out there. I think it's a great topic. If you come up with anything after the fact, shoot us a comment in the comment section, or send us an email, one of the two, and we'll gladly talk about it. If you have any topics you want us to talk about, we're open for suggestions. Our goal is to educate, get resources out there, and talk about it.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. See?
Open to suggestions.
Yes. So we're going to close out. We're looking at, what's today? Monday? Probably Wednesday?
Something like that.
Yeah, Wednesday. We'll drop it on the Facebook page, our next live. And we will see you guys then. Wash your hands. Be safe. And stay away. He's too close.
And next time I won't be bringing you the view of Michigan State Police. It'll be the FBI. I'll share the FBI's opinion.
Too close. Too close. All right, wash them hands.